Hi everyone, the next item on our review list is dimensional analysis, and this is a particular request of our science teachers, but it also is really powerful for some number sense and some fractions work and some critical thinking, so it's a really good one. Please pay attention to how I'm setting these up. I will be expecting you to set up in a similar way when we're doing tests on this. And also make sure that for the purpose of the homework and the material you're doing in this class, you exclusively use the unit conversions from this cheat sheet, which was provided in MyOpenMath. So you have your conversions between time units, between feet, yards, and miles, the fundamental metric units, so the standard units that we would use. Note that a lot of these we don't use for the derived units, and even I think the ampere might not be one that's going to come up in this class, but I use this sheet for multiple places, so just have it on hand. All of your metric prefixes, so you can scale up and down based on those. And then the last chunk here are going to be, again, a limited selection that I want you to use. So we have a length conversion. This is going to be a big one. I use some of these like light year, astronomical unit in some of your scientific notation review, angstrom, but again, those aren't things that are going to come up all the time. I would say the acre, possibly the kilogram, gallon. And I think those are the ones that you'll most commonly see. But the big one is going to be, this is the only length conversion I give you between imperial and metric. So you're always going to have to get back to meters and feet to do those conversions for the purposes of this class. I'm not claiming that's the most effective way generally to do these, but I just want to see that you can do certain calculations, and this will make sure that you have to show me a couple of steps on some of these. Okay, so back to our example. The first one we have is that a transect through a tropical forest measured 13,267 feet in length, and we want to know how many miles that is. So we're trying to convert feet to miles. So I'm going to start with my 13,267 feet. And a lot of times I see instructors force people to put that over 1 just because we're going to do fractions work. I don't actually care if you write it over 1 or not, but if that helps you line things up, go for it. So for our unit conversions, we're hoping to get from feet to miles, and we actually do have a few options in that area. So the imperial lengths, we have 5,280 feet in a mile. So that's going to be our unit conversion. So we know that 5,280 feet is equal to 1 mile. And what that allows is for us to build a fraction. We can either say 5,280 feet divided by 1 mile, or 1 mile divided by 5,280 feet. Either one of those should be equal to 1, because whenever you divide something by itself, you always get 1. So we can multiply by either of those fractions without changing the value, the size of this measurement. All we'll be changing is its appearance. So this is a great algebra trick. There's really nice thinking in these problems. We're always allowed to multiply by 1, and sometimes we can get really clever about what our 1 looks like. So now we have to decide which of these fractions we want to use. Our goal is to cancel out feet and end up with miles. So we'll want this second fraction. Basically, I'm looking at this and saying, okay, well, if I have feet on the top of my original fraction, I need feet on the bottom if it's going to cancel. And units cancel just like factors would cancel out of a fraction. So we can say, okay, feet divided by feet, that cancels out completely. And what I'm left with is just miles for the units. And I have the 13,267 that I need to divide by 5,280. You don't have to write this in between step. I just want to make sure that we can see it. And that then becomes a calculator problem. This sort of word problem application, this is the type of problem that I would actually not mind seeing a decimal answer for. And again, MyOpenMath will hopefully be clear about whether you should enter a decimal or not. If you're ever having a problem frustrate you because it's not clear about that, let me know and I'll try and fix it. But for this one, let's go ahead and jump over to the Desmos calculator just so I can introduce you to that. All right, so I've already got us there. Just go to desmos.com. Everything here is entirely free. We will use graphing and or scientific calculator for the purposes of this class. I'm going to show you scientific, but you can absolutely go into the graphing calculator and just type in calculations and it will do everything the scientific calculator does. So here's our calculator, and you can either type on a keyboard or just hit buttons here. I'd also point out that you can get a Desmos app for your smartphone, and that's actually really nice and handy, little handheld calculator, so you don't have to have multiple windows open while you're working on this. Okay, so if memory serves me, it was 13267, and then we want to divide by 5,280. And I like that it does this pretty print, so you can see if you've set your fractions up correctly. You can also hit this fraction bar here to make things a fraction, but just the division symbol will give you that fraction, or even this A over B. So I get about 2.513. I would say in general 2 decimal places is good unless it specifies, but it's always fine to do a little bit more. So 2.513. So back here, 2.513 miles is our answer. And if we're being really careful, we'd say approximately, just to show that we rounded there. I promise I won't pick on you hugely about that, but it's a nice thing to try and think about. Okay, so there was one conversion. Let me just show you one more that I think has a couple of steps. That was a single step, so those are always the nicest. This one gives us the circumference of the Earth, which is approximately 40,000 kilometers, and we want to convert that to miles. So last time we went from feet to miles, and now we're going from kilometers to miles. So let's start with our 40,000 kilometers. And again, if it helps you line things up, you can always write that over 1. And we need to get from kilometers to miles. So we're definitely going to have to get from metric to imperial. And remember, this is one place that I kind of restricted you with your cheat sheet. So looking here, the only conversion we have is that there are about 3.28 feet in a meter. So we know that 3.28 feet equals 1 meter, which means that we're going to have to get our kilometers changed to meters, and then we can change that to feet, and then we'll have to change feet to miles. So you can see sometimes this forces you to do a little bit longer road. I try not to get too crazy, but I want to see that you can do those multi-steps, and the only way I can make sure that happens is to restrict the conversions that I give you, so no looking up other conversion factors online. Okay, so let's go kilometers to meters first, and you can look on your chart, but I know this one, so I'm just going to go for it. There are 1,000 meters in 1 kilometer. So again, I get to, as long as I can say the two are equal, I can build a fraction out of them, and the value of that fraction is 1, which means it changes how my original value looks, but it doesn't actually change the measurement. It doesn't change the distance in this case. I need kilometers to go on the bottom. So I get 1 kilometer on the bottom and I get 1,000 meters on the top. And you can do this one step at a time, but my advice would be to just write out a string of conversions and do it all at once. It'll save you from making little in-between mistakes or rounding and then rounding again, which can compound your rounding error. So we have made it successfully to meters. We know that there are 3.28 feet in a meter. So I'm going to put the 3.28 feet on top because once again, I want the meters on the bottom so that that cancels out. And then my last one I used in the previous problem. There are 5,280 feet in a mile. So we want feet on the bottom in 1 mile. Okay, so let's make sure we canceled feet. We are down to miles, and our calculation, again, you don't have to write this out every time, but just to group up what we have the 40,000. We have to multiply by another 1,000 and a 3.28, and then we need to divide that by 1 times 1 times 5,280. Okay, so that's going to be our calculation, and then the units on that will be miles. So let's jump back over to Desmos. Okay, so here we are. And actually, I just accidentally hit this as I was switching over. So let me show you now that it reminded me. This will actually make your answer back into a fraction. So this is a way you can get Desmos to reduce a fraction for you. It looks like that one doesn't reduce. If I do 4/6, it gives me the decimal, but if I hit that, it tells me that the reduced value is 2/3. So you should be able to reduce fractions, but it's a great way to check yourself. Okay, so what did we have? We had, here I'm going to go ahead and make my fraction right away. We had 40,000 times 1,000 times 3.28, and we needed to divide all of that by 5,280. So I'm getting about 24,848.48. So 2484848. Okay, I think I can remember that. So 2484848 miles. So about 24,000 miles is what we're getting. And we'll see dimensional analysis show back up again in a little bit. We'll do it with powers, so areas and volumes instead of just lengths. And then we'll do it again with rates when we're doing some harder fractions work. So it'll crop up a few times just to make sure you're really understanding what's going on with this. Otherwise, I think that's it for now. Thanks for watching.